chocolate, and then we're going to go more to sweet wine and chocolate. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting because you kind of go red wine and chocolate, and some people like that, and some people like sweet wine. So we'll try both, and we'll see what we think.
Exactly. I think there are a lot of snobs out there who would never have chocolate with red wine, but I must admit, I kind of dig it a little bit if it's a certain kind of red wine.
Yeah, it does need to be a certain guy. I think there's a lot of people that claim a lot of Rasto wines, not the normal dry red wines, go well with chocolate. You've got to find the right wine. The sweet red wines generally will go well with chocolate if the chocolate's some sort of nice fondant nature to it. But I think with the trouble you get with red wine and chocolate is that if you've got a very dry chocolate and you've got a very dry red wine, it all ends up being quite dry.
Right.
And that's the key, is to try and get something where you've got a balance between the two. And that's tricky.
So it's really, you have to find the right chocolate for the wine.
Absolutely, yeah. Or the right wine for the chocolate.
Exactly.
It's a dry. Go on.
I might just say though, some people would say wine, chocolate, bring it all on.
Yeah.
So you represent the cultured, refined connoisseur's viewpoint. I'll say sometimes I'll just have it together, and it's a little like Reese's. You got your peanut butter and your chocolate, and it shouldn't go well together, but somehow it does. But I know what you're saying.
Like
chocolate can bludgeon out the flavor of a wine.
And red wine as well. I think the thing with it is that people have red wine and cheese. Here in France, white wine and cheese is much more a thing than red wine and cheese. It's much harder to get a good pairing between red wine and cheese. It's not to say though that red wine and cheese isn't delicious, because it is. It's just that either the cheese often overwhelms the wine, or the wine overwhelms the cheese. But the combination is delicious.
Give me the top thing to look for in pairing a wine and chocolate.
Well,
Start with you.
I think with the red wine, I think the tannin is going to be interesting. You need some pretty silky tannins, I find. Unless the chocolate is fondant, you've got some fondant nature to the dessert that you're having, then I think the tannins need to be quite silky and very smooth.
Okay.
As a very first start.
Debbie?
I always feel like the wine always needs to be slightly sweeter than the food you're serving it with. So I'm looking for a really fruity wine and then a less sweet chocolate, because I think that as soon as you put the chocolate in your mouth, it diminishes your perception of sweetness in the wine. So I have maybe a little bit of a harder time pairing, red wines and chocolate. So I'm interested in moving to some of the sweeter wines and seeing how that pairs.
Okay, and hitting cleanup.
I have to agree with Debbie that chocolate is very intensely flavored. So you need the sweetness. Typically, you need the sweetness in your wine to stand up to the intense flavor of the chocolate. So typically, it's not a like pound cake or a cookie. It's a dessert or a dessert food that has much more intense flavor. But honestly, what I really look for in pairing chocolate and wine is quantity in both.
Well said. Let's jump into some of that quantity, shall we?
Just got one other point to make though.
Yeah.
Is that one of the reasons why the Côte de Rome reds are interesting with chocolate is the natural, what we call, the French called sucrosity of Grenache. Grenache is a grape variety, which is obviously the dominant variety.
Sucrosity?
The sucrosity. It has a natural
Sounds like a
sweetness.
curse word.
Yeah, but it's not obviously it's a dry wine, but the flavour profile is sweet, and that is why it can be very interesting with chocolate, the Southern Rhodes.